The U.S. warship is already near the strait. Its radar is turning. Its watch teams are looking across narrow water. Aircraft and sensors are feeding the same picture back toward command, and every part of the scene is meant to send a simple message. The route is open. But the tanker ahead of it is not moving like the route is open. It is heavy with cargo, slow to turn, and exposed on both sides by coastline, traffic, and water that leaves very little room for error. A warship can maneuver with weapons ready and aircraft overhead. A tanker has draft, speed limits, insurance conditions, cargo instructions, crew risk, and a schedule that can be broken by one bad decision. The declaration says access has returned. The tanker is still behaving like access is uncertain. That is where the contradiction begins. Not in a speech, not in a map, not in the image of a U.S. ship entering dangerous water. It begins in the space between a military claim and a commercial decision. If the route is open, the ship should move like it believes the route is open. It should hold course with confidence. It should pass through the choke point as part of normal traffic, not as a slow calculation inside a danger zone. But oil ships do not move because a navy says the water is usable. They move when the people responsible for the vessel, the cargo, the crew, and the financial risk believe the danger has dropped enough to justify the transit. A warship can enter the Strait of Hormuz and show power. It can escort. It can patrol. It can transmit confidence. But the tanker has to decide whether that confidence is strong enough to bet the ship, the cargo, and the route on it. When the Navy moves and the tanker waits, power has entered the strait. Control has not fully returned. The Strait of Hormuz is not open water in the way a map can make it look. It is a narrow passage where the room for error is small, the traffic is dense, and the coastline never feels far away. A ship entering that water is not only entering a route, it is entering a corridor where every contact matters. A patrol boat that appears from the coast. A wake moving across the lane. A radar return that has to be sorted quickly. A drone report that may or may not be connected to the ship's passage. A mine warning that does not have to be confirmed before it changes behavior. For the U.S. Navy, those are threat management problems. They are watched, classified, tracked, challenged, and folded into a military picture. For a tanker, they become a commercial decision. That is the difference. A destroyer can turn with weapons ready. It can maneuver, communicate, escalate, and respond. It is built to move under threat. A tanker cannot act like that. It cannot sprint through the strait. It cannot sharply change course without creating new danger. It cannot simply absorb uncertainty as part of a combat mission, because its purpose is not to fight for the route. Its purpose is to move oil through it. And that means the route has to be trusted by more than sailors and commanders. It has to be trusted by captains, insurers, operators, charterers, cargo owners, and governments waiting for fuel to arrive. Each of them reads the same situation differently. The warship sees a lane it can patrol. The captain sees a slow ship with limited escape options. The insurer sees exposure. The operator sees a schedule that can break. The cargo owner sees money sitting in dangerous water. The buyer sees a delivery that may not arrive on time. That is why the declaration alone cannot solve the problem. A navy can reduce risk. It can make the strait harder to attack. It can provide escort, surveillance, deterrence, and response. But it cannot instantly make every commercial actor behave as if the danger has disappeared. Commercial confidence moves slower than military presence. And inside a choke point, that delay matters. Because once ships begin treating the route as dangerous, the water can remain open and still stop functioning normally. Tankers may wait outside the passage. Operators may delay departure. Escorts may become part of the planning. Insurance prices may rise before any new attack occurs. Cargo owners may accept slower movement because the alternative looks worse. The strait does not have to be physically blocked to become restricted. It only has to become uncertain enough that normal movement no longer feels normal. The warship moves first. It holds position near the route. It watches the approaches. It keeps sensors active, communicates with other units, and shows that the United States can put naval power into the choke point. That matters. A navy that cannot enter the water cannot secure the water. Presence is the starting point. Without it, there is no escort, no patrol, no deterrent signal, and no visible claim that the route can be protected. But the next test is not whether the warship moves. The next test is whether the oil ships follow. That is where the action becomes harder to see. A tanker slows before committing to the passage. Another waits for updated guidance. Another operator asks whether the transit should happen now or later. Another ship moves, but only under tighter precautions. Another delays because the cargo is valuable, the route is exposed, and the cost of one mistake is too high. From the outside, this can look less dramatic than a battle, but it is the real pressure point. A sea lane does not fail only when explosions fill the screen. It can fail in smaller movements. A slower crossing, a postponed departure, a longer queue, a more expensive policy, a request for escort, a route review, a captain unwilling to treat the water as ordinary. That is what declared access without restored movement looks like. The Navy is present. The lane is not sealed. Ships may still pass. But the rhythm of trade has changed. The route has become something that must be managed, not simply used. That shift is important because oil shipping depends on predictability. Tankers do not only need a path through water. They need timing, confidence, insurance, port scheduling, cargo planning, and a reasonable belief that the voyage will not turn into a crisis. When those pieces no longer align, movement changes before the map does. The map can still show the route as open. The naval statement can still say the lane is being protected. But the ships themselves reveal the deeper condition. Are they moving normally? Are they holding back? Are they passing because the route is trusted or because they have no clean alternative? That is the action inside the contradiction. Military force is trying to restore the route. Commercial traffic is testing whether restoration is real. And if the tanker is still moving like a target, the answer is not clean. The consequence does not stay inside the strait. When oil ships hesitate, the delay travels outward. A tanker waiting near the Strait of Hormuz is not just one vessel moving slowly. It is cargo that has not reached the next port. It is a refinery adjusting expectations. It is a buyer watching delivery risk. It is an insurer recalculating exposure. It is an operator deciding whether speed is worth the danger. The market does not need total closure to react. It only needs doubt. If the route becomes slower, fuel movement becomes less predictable. If insurance becomes more expensive, transit becomes more expensive. If escorts become part of the expected passage, then normal trade has already been replaced by protected movement. If captains have to treat every crossing as a live risk decision, the route is no longer functioning as ordinary water. That is the hidden cost of a choke point under pressure. It can remain usable and still lose part of its economic function. This is why the image of the US Navy entering the Strait of Hormuz is not the final proof of control. It is proof that naval power can reach the route. It is proof that the United States can put force into the space where movement matters. But the deeper question is whether that force restores the behavior the route exists to support. Oil ships are not symbols. They are the working machinery of the energy system. They move because contracts, schedules, ports, crews, and cargo owners all line up behind the decision to transit. When that decision becomes uncertain, the cost spreads through the network. Ports wait, buyers adjust, schedules shift, fuel markets price risk, governments watch the route more closely. And every delay sends the same message. The strait may be open, but it is not yet trusted. That is not the same as saying the US Navy has failed. The issue is harder than that. A navy can be powerful and still face a condition that power alone cannot immediately reverse. Because the threat is not only whether an enemy can strike a ship, the threat is whether enough danger remains that commercial actors continue to behave as if a strike is possible. That is a much harder problem to solve. You can send a warship into a lane. You cannot order confidence back into every tanker that has to pass through it. The doctrine is simple. A sea lane is not controlled when a navy enters it. It is controlled when the traffic it exists to protect moves through it normally. Presence matters, escorts matter, deterrence matters. Radar, aircraft, weapons, command authority, and patrols all matter. But none of them are the final test. The final test is movement. Not one tanker passing under pressure. Not one escort mission. Not one statement that the route has reopened. Normal movement, repeated movement, commercial movement that does not have to treat the passage like a gamble. That is the difference between declared access and restored access. Declared access is what power says. Restored access is what traffic does. The Strait of Hormuz makes that difference visible because the route is too narrow, too valuable, and too exposed to hide the gap for long. If the warship is moving with confidence while the tanker is still moving with caution, the contradiction is already on screen. The question is not whether the US Navy can enter the strait. It can. The question is whether the traffic behind it believes the route has become safe enough to move normally again. That is where control becomes harder to claim. Because control is not the ability to stand inside a dangerous place. Control is the ability to make the place function again. For the Strait of Hormuz, functioning means oil ships moving without acting like every transit is a test of survival. It means captains are not waiting for extraordinary reassurance. It means insurers are not treating the lane as a live question. It means operators can plan movement as logistics instead of crisis management. Until that happens, the route may be open in military language, but commercially, it remains under pressure. The Strait of Hormuz is not secure when US ships arrive. It is secure when commercial ships no longer have to move like targets.